is The Furnace with John Burton.
All right, I want to talk about something that might be really challenging for those of you who are pastors or ministers out there. Here, I'm going to just come right out and say it, then we'll talk about it just a little bit, and then hopefully you'll leave some comments. I firmly believe that there are many, many pastors and ministers out there who, for the sake of the spiritual and emotional health of their wives, absolutely need to step out of ministry, step away from local church leadership, step away from itinerant ministry, step away from missions, and go get a secular job. I know how easy it is to tie your identity to the ministry. It's crazy easy to do that. And even more than that, and even more than just tying your identity to ministry, really everything can be connected to ministry. Your livelihood, how you are going to, pay your bills, and how everything makes sense in your life because you have a paycheck and you're involved in a local church. And beyond that, you have responsibilities. What about all the people, that are in the church? And bottom line, everybody, is there are a lot of women out there who are just crushed because of ministry, and pastors need to consider their family ahead of their ministry. Now, I'm a big, mega crazy believer in fulfilling your ministry. I'm also a believer that there needs to be a right balance, a right understanding on how you function in ministry in comparison to how you function as a husband or how you function as a dad. There are times when you can't be husband or dad on a particular night because you do need to minister, you need to travel, you need to be in the church, something came up, you got to visit somebody, on and on. So just because wife and kids just want dad to stay home, that doesn't always trump the responsibilities of ministry, which is actually what leads me to saying what I'm saying. Because of the demands of ministry, because of everything that's going on, it very certainly can make sense for a pastor or minister to step out of ministry and to go get a regular job. I know for me and my wife, Amy, she's a phenom. Anybody that knows Amy, you know that. I've been in ministry, we've been in pastoral ministry for the bulk of the last 20 years. We've been in some form of ministry the entire, even more than that, 24 years of our life. And we've been married 24 years, and with the exception of the little tiny part right at the beginning of our marriage when she was finishing school, I immediately started a full-time youth pastor position in San Diego. And since then, we've been planting churches and starting prayer movements and on staff at churches and just on and on. And so that has been our life for the last 20 years. And then when we moved here to Branson about 4.5 years ago, I knew that Amy needed a break, and she didn't even need to tell me. I knew that the demands of ministry were just crazy intense, and she had laid it all down for 20 years. And she'd been faithful, and she'd done everything that needed to be done, and she handled the finances, and she was in children's ministry if no one else would be, and she would hear all of the crap from all of the people, about the gossip and the disagreements and all of that stuff, and I knew it was time to normalize just a little bit, and God's grace increased on our lives as we did that. So when we moved to Branson, she immediately got a job at Dolly Parton Stampede as a server, and I started the process of transitioning to itinerant ministry. And well, then shortly after that, it wasn't too long where God gave us business ideas, and kind of the rest is history there. And we started escape rooms and axe throwing and mystery events and those types of things. And so that's just been a blast. We've been having the time of our lives over the last 4 years. And I've been able to write for Charisma Magazine and other magazines, and just on my own website. And I've traveled a little bit. I've taken myself off the road mostly, just so I can focus on these other things. But I've done some travel to minister. But the big idea here is Amy needed a break. So what do you do, husbands, when your wives, after grueling years of surrendering their lives and families and time and energy and emotional well-being for the sake of the ministry, what do? You let them have some time. Everybody's different. I get that. Every family's different. Every situation's different. Some wives are just incredibly wired, and there is, and I don't mean to differentiate between men and women here. I know men are typically the pastors or whatever, but women can be as full in and full on in ministry as men. Certainly, I know many of them. And so it's not always a guy-gal thing. Maybe gals, you need to give your husbands a break. Bottom line is, your ministry is not more important than your family. It isn't. And I've had teachings on this. I'm not going to go into detail or into depth on this. I alluded to it a little bit. When you're in ministry, there are times where you've got to definitely sacrifice your family time and all of that for ministry. And it's just a reality. But listen, you don't want to lose your family. You don't want to lose your wife. You don't want to lose your kids. You don't want that to happen. And I'll tell you this, you may very well be happier starting a business or doing something like that, and more full of life and more full of joy, and better in the kingdom and more valuable to God, and all of this, being in business as opposed to being in ministry, or doing both. And I do both, and so and it's so much fun. And I'll end with saying this: the main reason why, and I'll be blunt as heck. The reason why spouses, whether they're men or women, and not only spouses but the actual minister, is so burnt out and wounded and crushed and ripped apart and in tears at night and losing their sanity, by and large, I know they have a responsibility in this. They have a responsibility to tend to their own emotional health. I get that. But by and large, it's because of people who are simply out of line. They're mean. They're selfish. I'm talking about people in the pews. They're selfish. They're self-centered. They aren't caring. They aren't loving. Instead of heaping praise on their pastors and supporting them and giving financially and doing what they can, so many are gossiping and they're complaining and they're dividing the church, and they're leaving the church, and they're elevating their own opinions above that of leadership, and on and on and on. And so, people, you got to stop doing that. Stop. You're hurting people. But yeah, at the end of the day, I do think there comes a time. Step out of ministry. Come on, it's almost like it's taboo to even say such a thing. Quit idolizing your ministry and let God bring a shift to your life. And man, and there's some of you ministers out there, you've just been fighting the same battle, and you're not making any headway. Some of you, you're not making headway because of a lot of reasons, including it's time to move on, get out, just stop the madness. So, what do you think? Love to hear from you all. Love to hear from some spouses. And what do you think about this? All right, leave some comments. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to The Furnace with John Burton. You can access media, read articles, and partner with the ministry online at burton.tv. And by all means, share this podcast with those who are hungry for revival, reformation, and revolution.